Hello everyone, here are our last two slides on civil rights events and organizations. Sorry I didn't get these last two in with the last video, I just didn't want to run out of time in the middle of them. I was rambling a bit too much as I am now. So in 1963 there was the March on Washington that was ultimately organized by many civil rights leaders within the state of Georgia. And the reason it came about was President Kennedy was sending the strongest civil rights bill to Congress in June of '63 to ultimately end all segregation. The bill called for an end to discrimination in public facilities, assurance of fair employment, and voter registration practices. Congress kind of took its time with the bill. They weren't that keen on passing it. They were kind of fearful of what it might cause in society. Well, in response to Congress's slowness, in August of that year, over 250,000 people representing all races, nationalities, genders gathered before the Washington Monument to kind of force passage of the bill. As they stood together, MLK made one of his most remembered speeches, "I Have a Dream," and it was a day to just kind of push Congress past this bill. So ultimately the Civil Rights Act is passed. In June of '63, President Kennedy goes on TV and he's describing segregation as a moral crisis for the country, something that basically stating something needs to be done about it. And President Kennedy sends this bill to Congress and they try to change the laws of the country. Before Kennedy can get the bill passed, he is assassinated. But President Johnson comes in and vows to see the law be passed, even though Johnson was not always seen as a civil rights activist or in favor of civil rights, because he was from the South, he was from Texas, but ultimately he knows that this is something that needs to be done in society. It becomes law in '64, and to this date it's one of the most far-reaching and important civil rights legislations since Reconstruction. It ultimately made all segregation illegal. The law even allowed the federal government to withhold funds from schools that would not integrate. So ultimately then, all school systems begin to integrate because they need federal funding. Just like the school systems in Georgia with the Sibley Commission, they said, you know what, we'll just start private schools instead of have to deal with worrying about the problem of integration. You know, the Georgia General Assembly said, we're not going to even fund your school if you integrate. Well, now Georgia and other states that are making those kind of laws have no choice. They have to integrate or they're not going to get federal funding. And states need federal education funding just as much as local school systems need state funding. So the Civil Rights Act changes our society for the better and forever. All right, that is the end of part 2 of our civil rights series. There's one more video that you need to watch, which is on modern Georgia events, kind of since World War II modern Georgia, leading up to about the Olympic Games time period.